All right, this is the second video where we're going to go through creating a loop or demonstrating how to use iteration as part of our code. Um, so our problem is that, or our original problem was that we wanted to know first thing in the morning how the kids are feeling. Now we can extend, or the students can extend on this app. They can add other things to the drop down and get other kind of things happening. And they can just, I would just invite them to have a bit of a play around with that and see how it works. The second thing we want to show them is how to use, or how to use a loop. Now, like I said, when I visited you, it's a bit limited in terms of JavaScript as to how we can do loops. But one thing we can do is a timed loop to do a countdown timer. Now this is going to be really handy for kind of games and things. So I'd invite the students to think about that. But maybe the problem that we're presenting here is, you don't want this orange screen to be up for too long. You just want it to be up for long enough for the teacher to be able to see everybody's screen, and then you want it to go away. So in order to do that, we're going to use one of these timed loops. So before we do anything in terms of the design, I'm just going to add another on event in here. Now, I need something to trigger this timer. Okay, so I don't want it to necessarily start from the second the app starts. I really need something to trigger that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to create a new screen, and I'm just going to put a start button on it. Okay. And this is going to be the thing that actually triggers our kind of clock to start counting down. All right, so screen 4 is going to be called start screen. All right, so back to my code. Now I'm kind of demonstrating how I might actually roll with this. So my on event is when I click on the start button. The very first thing I want to happen is I want it to set to this, the feeling screen. All right, so now I can test that. Oh, hang on a minute. I've got a bit of a problem here. When I run the app, it automatically goes to this feeling screen. So what I need to do to kind of solve that is I need to go to my start screen, and you'll notice that I have a little button here that says make default. I need to click on that so that when I run the app, it defaults to that one. All right, click start. It's going to go to that one, that page. So so far, this little bit of code that I've got here is working just as I want it to. All right, now remembering that the next thing we have to do is we have to create a variable. Okay, so a variable is an empty vessel. I talked about it being a suitcase, but it could be a jar or a bag or whatever. It's just going to collect things in there. All right. And so in this example, it's collecting the seconds that are going past so that we can count up to 30 seconds. And then when there are 30 seconds in the bag or in the jar, we want something to happen. Okay. So the very first thing we need to do is that we need to declare a variable. So that's this very top one here. So I pop that in here. Pop that in there. Okay, I had a bit of a problem there. I think it's because the app was still running and I was trying to make changes to it. Anyway, so I've declared this variable. So I'm going to call it seconds, and I'm going to set it to 0. Okay, because I've got an empty box or an empty suitcase or an empty jar at the beginning that I'm going to collect my seconds into. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go back into control, and I'm going to add a timed loop. Now it's important to make sure that you're adding it into the on event loop. Now remember that timed loop that's milliseconds. So I'm going to get it to do something every time 1 second or 1,000 milliseconds passes. All right. So now every time that 1,000 milliseconds passes, I want to put 1 second into the box or into the suitcase. So in order to do that, I use a variable, and I'm going to assign a variable. So the thing I'm going to do is seconds. So that's my variable. And for every 1 second, I'm going to put another 1 unit into the variable or into the suitcase. So for that, I need to use my little maths operator. And so it's plus. So it's going to be for every 1 second, I'm going to go seconds plus 1. All right, so every second it's going to build up. Now, in order to have a nice visual so I can see that happening, because if I run this right now and I start, that timer is actually counting down, but I don't have any visual on it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this little console down the bottom in order to just show me as a programmer that this is working. So in my variable, I'm going to grab one of these little console log blocks, and I'm just going to pop that in under there. And now we talked a bit about this today, so hopefully you are good with that. So we're going to use a plus again, and so we're going to go seconds. And then in this second one, we're going to put a string in. Okay, so remember this is some specific text. So we're going to go, now this, my example said seconds have elapsed, but you know, we could say are in the box. All right. So now if I run that again and I start it, what's going to happen is that it's going to count my seconds here. All right. So you can see those being counted. And that's just a nice visual so that you know this is actually working. All right. Now what I want is when that gets to 30 seconds, that's when I want to trigger something to happen. All right, so you remember in our example, we actually had another screen, which was a timeout screen or a time's up screen, and that was blue. Okay, so I'll just find a nice blue in here. Oh, what have we got? Oh, it's a bit small, it's a bit hard to see. Oh, gosh, Pinterest. Do this one. These ones are a bit bigger. All right, so 3792CB. So 3792CB, that's a nice blue, and that's called my blue screen. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to have another if statement in here underneath. So now I want to look if it's equal. So does seconds equal 30, because it's how long we're giving them, or 120 or whatever it might be. I'm just going to go 5 so we can actually see this work. So when this down the bottom gets to 5 seconds are in the box, then we're going to trigger for it to actually set screen to that blue screen. Okay, so let's run that. Start it. We're going to start counting, and then hopefully when we get to 5, it's going to trigger to go to that blue screen. Okay. Now remember that 5 can be changed. That's just there really to just give us a visual and to make sure it's nice and snappy. Okay, so that's just a really quick recap as to what we actually did when we met together in terms of working through this process of making the app with the students to teach them about branching, user input, and iteration or loops. Okay, and hopefully they'll be able to then use these things in their apps that they create. All right, please reach out if you have any questions or things aren't working properly. Thank you.